August Assembly, I am well aware of the magnitude of this task. This year, though, this task is indeed doubly difficult because of the patently challenging and constraining economic times Guyana and the world around it is experiencing and has been experiencing. I have here, sir, an expert view out of Harvard University. Professor Lawrence Summers has called it the age of secular stagnation in a piece by the same name, Secular Stagnation, Foreign Affairs, March-April 2016. And the key to understanding our present economic reality is one of secular stagnation, he says, is the economics or the economies of especially the industrialized world suffer from an imbalance resulting from an increasing propensity to save and a decreasing propensity to invest. The result is an excessive saving and the drag it causes on demand, thereby reducing growth. What he is arguing, Mr. Speaker, is that the world seems to be stuck on neutral. It is not reversed, it's simply stuck on neutral. And then another very important person from Morgan Stanley Investment Management, an Indian, Ruchir Sharma, in this same mentioned the demographics of stagnation, because it's happening all over, it would appear. Trinidad, Suriname, Venezuela, which is even worse, and so on. The demographics of stagnation, he quotes, in every single part of the world, economic growth has failed to return to the rate before the Great Depression. Economists have come up with a variety of theories for why this recovery has been the weakest in post-war history, including high indebtedness, growing income inequality, and so on. And he says that the global slowdown is the growth of the labor force, or the slowdown in the growth of the labor force. These trying times, Mr. Speaker, can distract and kind of detract from staying the course. But not so our finance minister. No one's going to detract or distract you. Sir, you have kept your sight in the big picture whilst others have gotten lost in the shrubs. I want to tell you and state this because I've noticed it. Your keen economic mind have allowed you to rationalize the correct path and trajectory needed at this juncture of a country's history. And we will forever be proud and grateful for this economic leadership at this time. There are two especially important issues about this agenda 2017 as I refer to it, which appeals to me. And firstly, it's the need for tax reform, and secondly, in the context of a global climate change and all the articulations of why the need for such special approaches towards sustainable development and so on, the green state development that you mentioned. So tax reform and green state development. I wish, Mr. Speaker, to treat with these two, of course, time dependent, in the context of the utterances made by my colleagues over there, and some of the social commentators they quoted, and even some of the chatterati that they quoted. I certainly respect and understand their sometimes vivid, caustic comments. But in the same breath, I certainly, though disagreeing with some of them, I hope that they also respect some of my very strong views on this matter. Tax avoidance and tax evasion, Mr. Speaker, have been around ever since authorities began levying taxes. So too have attempts to influence the rules of taxation. This is not a Guyanese phenomenon. This has been worldwide. And this troubling state of affairs requires rectification. So I can see, with Honorable Minister Jordan's arguments for a restoration of fiscal autonomy and a call for people and corporations in Guyana to voluntarily and honestly pay their due. And on this score, I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. I was present in this National Assembly in April 2005 when that VAT Act, or VAT Bill at that time, together with the excise tax amendment, was being debated. I was over here in the government side, but kind of a, I hope this is not all parliamentary language, doghoused at the end of the government side after being expelled earlier that year, where, you know, we were shifted somewhat to show separation because of that expulsion. But I sat there and I watched that debate. That debate saw both the opposition there. That debate saw Bill number 3 of 2005 being strenuously argued for by Mr. Mansour Nadir and Minister of Industry then. As Hansard would reflect, VAT was to be made applicable, and this is the important point, Mr. Speaker. VAT was to be made applicable as the general rule to all goods and services. All goods and services. At 59, I have it here, of the Hansard, 5912. I want to quote him. It is so important that we quote these passages. VAT is designed to allow for taxation on all forms of consumer spending in a manner that is even and fair. Under VAT, the full burden, and this is page 5915 of the Hansard on that debate, Mr. Speaker. A full burden on the tax falls on the selling price paid by the consumer and should not be borne at by the cost of production. And this is important. The VAT is to be applied to every taxable supply by a taxable person and to every import of goods or services. Every. And generally, if anybody understands what VAT is, it is supposed to be one rate for all goods and services. Indeed, it's true, there will be, for certain necessitous reasons, we are going to have it exempted or zero rated in certain extensions. Typically, the VAT burden is not to be shifted onto every or any specialized categories. And that is the position we have here, Mr. Speaker. So, they are, and what happened on that occasion, Mr. Speaker, is this. The bill that was brought never stated a rate. The President, in the context of whatever he had wanted then, Mr. Jagdev, and I notice he's especially absent here, didn't want to put a rate in that bill. He indicated that he would like, Honorable Member Bar Jagdev, I should say, sir. Yes, didn't want to be here, and I suppose that probably there's this reason why he didn't want to be here. So the VAT bill did not have a rate, and we were supposed to know what the VAT tax was supposed to replace at that year, 2005, when it was being debated, was supposed to bring in at some $16 billion, and it is supposed to have been at a rate that was supposed to now bring in that $16 billion. Which rate we were speaking, and I was very close to most of the members in the government then, Kaulasar, Minister of Finance then, and so on. And it was supposed to be 12%. 12%. Kaulasar was the Minister of Finance at that time. Then President Jagdev and his government had indicated that the rate will be, his word, revenue neutral. But what we had is that the elections came in 2006. He didn't bother implement the VAT, and on the very first 2007, he implemented it, and he put a rate of 16, which is 4% more than could have made the thing VAT revenue neutral. Now, there were some people, there were some persons here saying what we're doing now is legal larceny. Well, that was legal larceny when from a rate of 12, you carried it to 16. The expert recommended 12. Let me just quote what Mr. Christopher Ram stated at that time. Please, you seem to be getting worried now. The legal larceny, if it was that, was committed then. At page of his, what is called Focus Ghana's National Budget, Raman McRae in 2008. This is what he said, page 4. Perhaps the most significant item to come out of the speech was the vast windfall generated by the value-added tax. Some $12.6 billion. Yes. With the 49% of the budget. The excess on VAT alone was 76%, but because the government linked the two with excise tax, it committed itself to that was not revenue neutrality. And then he said the surplus is huge and raises questions about the thoroughness with which the projections were prepared. And it would now be immoral for the government to renege on its commitment to readjust the rate and so on. What we are doing here, Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment to the people of Guyana in the campaign that we will reduce it to 12. And we have the courage and the strength to start the process of reducing it to 12. But in keeping with the principle of VAT, we also have, when reducing it now to 14 and next year, probably or the next year to 12, we have to widen that tax base of goods and services. And so that because of the fact now you're collecting in VAT about 34 billion, we do not want to reduce it to stop our spending in relation to roads and bridges and whatever else, that services that we have, it cannot be done. So please understand, if you know anything about economics, you will now appreciate why it is so difficult that you must not go simply and lessen that base that we have.
Tell them, comrade. Now they know the facts.
The underlying principle of VAT, as I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, and it was stated not only by Mansour Nadir, it was also stated by Sheikh Baksh, then what minister he was? Whatever, he was the minister then. And all of them were talking about this. And they were saying, so whatever the goods or services rule of thumb, VAT must be paid. Because it is a tax and expenditure, not in the source of production. It is when you're expending. So if you want to save money, you have to learn to spend less. That is all. And that is what the VAT is all about. To deviate too much will distort this tax. And that is what we are saying here. We have to go back now, since we want to get back to 12%, we have to widen that tax base of goods and services. And if a lot more goods will have to be removed from zero rated, it has to be. Exactly. And we see during the course of all these years, from 2007, a number of orders came into being, zero rating this and zero rating that, and a lot of things. Because the rate was so high, the PPP government could have done it. But if we want to bring back the rate that it is supposed to be, 12, on which we are going to bring it before the end of our term, we have to widen that base. So, Mr. Speaker, this deflection of blame to us that we are being obscene and we are incompetent in this tax regime is mere manipulation. We will not allow this opposition, sir, to cast us adrift in an ocean of lies. The truth and the whole truth must be known. They want the impression to be given.
I'll remember, let us try to keep the language within bounds. I believe one
All
word.
right, the whole truth must be known, sir. And I wanted that. I hope that is not unparliamentary, because I'll withdraw it if it is. It is not. So they want the impression to be given that we will further impoverish the poor with the VAT on electricity and water. But my colleagues, the people were obviously impressed by your arguments, which were all false. Obviously. And if they want to, well, that is why I understand you are trying to get hundreds out here. You can't get any to come and march. You can't get any to come and march. Yes. But my colleagues have given the statistics that up to 83% in relation to the category of water and about 90-something% in relation to electricity, or probably reverse, they do not have to pay VAT on those two items. So the argument has been made. And indeed, if there are certain items that will have to be now be made VATable, it is consistent with the original principles of VAT, the original philosophy of VAT. And we are going to further reduce it. So across the board, you are going to benefit from the 12%. I hope that they understand that. But we also have, yes, I think I will have to go to my ministry. I just wanted to clear the air there. And I hope that it was clear. Mr. Speaker,
And you have done so.
I want to indicate that we have been doing a wonderful job in the security sector area.
So much ahead, you.
It is all expressed in page 56 to 58 by the minister as to what we will be doing as an overview for the year 2017. But we also have lots more than that. And I want to say, in the context of this limited time, that we do have a number of other things, which is to build community relations so that we can restore the confidence, so that with that we are going to have more people coming out and speaking to the police, speaking out. You see, in Guyana here, I have come to learn that silence is violence. If people do not come out and speak out against the people that are doing the wrongs to them, like what happened in Berbice. After so many piracy incidents, we then understood that the pirates were the same Berbicians' neighbors and their family. But they do not want to speak out. When you start speaking out against your criminal family members and neighbors and community members, you're going to get the thing solved. And especially in the context, yes, we got a report done by Mr. Ganga Prasad on this issue, and he was mentioning that, and I'm adopting some of the advice he gave the ministry that way. And yes, but more than that, we have also to ensure the further education of the police force and also giving them the assets. And the assets have been given. In the context of the limited resources we have, if we wanted more assets, I suppose we might have had to leave the tax rate at 16. And we probably would have gotten more than the 11% of the budget for the security sector. But we can't because of the fact we would like to reduce. And I want to say that some of the colleagues over there made the case as to why, indeed, we had to widen the base, because they wanted everything. They wanted more CAT scans in and around the country. They wanted a whole set of things all across the place. Where do you think you get those things from? You get it from a revenue stream. And if we can't get it this year, we're going to get it next year. And so that is why it is so important. But we do have a number of good things happening. We have reinforced the mounted branch. We have sent it to Maibikuri. It has now gone to Lethem. The canine section that used to be laughed about, all of that, is now also enhanced to the extent that the sniffer dogs and the other dogs are ensuring that criminals be caught. We are also deploying additional assets in the set of additional boats to the marine section and especially to Tamakai. Oh yes, we do have 2 horses. Strengthening and merging of crime intelligence and security. That's another big thing that we have, along with the fact that, and I'm very glad, Mr. Finance Minister, you made it available to us to do something about that 911 system that we've been having so much trouble with. And so we are in the process of moving even further ahead and further forward with those things that are on page 56 to 58 in the budget. We have to train some more policemen, and I've been pleading with members across the floor. If they have friends and family that want to join up, they say we're not creating employment. I am short 1,000 policemen. Send some over so that they could be employed. Okay? Please. We are also going to develop we are going to also develop, Mr. Speaker, we're going to develop the master strategy plan and launch these for drugs and also trafficking. One happening on the 16th of December, that is the drugs master strategy, and the trafficking in early January. We came out of a tier that called us watch list, second tier watch list. We want to reach now tier 1. And we're going to soon reach it because we have been getting more prosecution successful in that area.